What if you could transform your biggest problem into an opportunity and see real-time transformation and learn from the challenges of some of the most intriguing leaders in the world? That's what the signature leadership process, the PRO format, is all about. You see, through a combination of executive, speed coaching, and handwriting analysis, I help world-class leaders not only uncover their authentic selves, but communicate their vision in a way that's personable, relatable, and motivating. Now, we're going to go through what's called my PRO framework. We start with the person's problem, we then look how to reframe it through their handwriting, and then look at the opportunity about how they can implement a solution, all within 20 minutes. And you're going to see some of the most intriguing authors, thought leaders, musicians, athletes, and more in a way they've never shared before, through their stories, through their real challenges that they have with a bit of vulnerability. And through that, you're going to be able to project your own challenge to see what you could learn from their process that they're going through as leaders. I'll see you on the Signature Leadership Podcast to see what you can do to transform your biggest problem into an opportunity for immediate growth. Hi, welcome to the Signature Leadership Show Cumulative Edition. Here we're going to look at what some of the highlights were over the course of the past month and a half of the Signature Leadership Show, where world-class leaders uncover their authentic selves, and in the process, we uncover ours.
Unlocking the Power of AI with Mark Herschberg.
Can you tell me, what should we know about AI when it comes to careers today?
We're recording this in the fall of 2023, and AI has, of course, been in the news. Now, AI has been around for decades, but recently we've seen LLMs, large language models, really come to the forefront, and people are talking about the impacts it's going to have on our companies, on our careers, on our customers. Effectively, when we're talking primarily about large language models, these are tools that can generate a large amount of content very quickly and easily, but they have some limitations and flaws, hallucinations where they make up information. They have just areas where they're not as good.
What are one or two ways that you would encourage people to get buy-in in an idea that might not be popular within a team?
You do need to make sure everyone feels heard. Often we see leaders saying, well, I listened, I heard the comments. And in fact, the leader may very well have heard the comments. But if the followers, if the team didn't feel heard, said, well, I submitted a comment, I don't even know if that guy read it, then he doesn't feel heard. So you want to make sure they understand you have heard them, even if you chose not to go with their option. But of course, leadership is getting people to buy into your decision, and especially people who may not completely agree with it. So recognizing that there's been a lot of changes in how we see the workplace and our expectations. They're not set in stone yet. We don't know how they're going to resolve, and they're going to continue to change. But we as leaders have to make decisions and get that buy-in from people across the spectrum on any particular decision we make.
Discovering your perfect niche for maximum impact with Shanice Miller.
What's a leadership challenge or possibility you have right now?
Oh, I have two good ones, but I think right now it's really on going in and focusing more to find out which particular niche I want to really niche down to. Right now, my niche is, I am niched down to service providers, coaches and consultants, but I want to niche down a little bit more because I know that I can make templated systems. I can really do a lot faster and better work for a smaller niche population. So just really because I have such wonderful results for my photography clients, for my interior design clients, a lot of my creatives get really good results. And I just want to really hone in on and see, okay, where can I make the most impact?
So a few things I'm seeing. Your strengths are, you've got a lot of self-confidence. So you've built this very strong sense of I. If you literally look at the I on I told you, it's the very first line. It might be difficult to see, that's as close up as I can get. That I represents a good sense of self. It's setting clear, strong boundaries with people. You walk with confidence. You command respect in social situations. People, when you walk into a room, even virtually, people really respond to you. So as a leader, and this is one of the things we're talking about, there's a lot of confidence.
Well, zoning in on the niche, it's really about testing. And I think that's part of the rigidity as well, in having those systems in place, having that data to support it, because I do need that data, those systems. I need, and even with hiring, I have a whole outline of what I'm looking for. And I just need to do that more with the strategy portion. So if I'm talking about interviewing, finding someone to fill that strategy role, I just need to get really clear and focused, let go of some of that rigidity, but I still need some parameters to get really focused on what it is I'm exactly looking for the person to do in the business that can do the same or a better, because I do know people come with more different experiences and they have better ideas and things like that than I do. I'm not the know-it-all at all, but letting them have that freedom to be able to go into that strategy area.
Elevate your brand with the Authentic Swing Blueprint with Gair Maxwell.
Can you talk a little more about
Yeah.
what you mean by a company needs to become their own media company in 2024?
Here's why. Bob runs a company called Thermalwood Canada. They're based in Bathurst, New Brunswick. Population, 13,000. In other words, they're in the middle of nowhere. No one knows. We've heard of Paris, London, New York, Tokyo, Copenhagen, Helsinki. No one's heard of Bathurst, New Brunswick. But Bob's running a manufacturing company doing a niche product called thermally modified wood, and he's literally selling to people all over the world. Okay? Now, it started with identity. I always say to my audiences, I talk about it in the book in chapter 7, you've only got 2 to 6 words to really own the market. Whatever the 2 to 6 words are, when you figure them out, like Nike did a pretty good job of it, Jamie, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the 3 words for Nike?
Just do it.
Right. What's the same phrase for Reebok? Nobody knows. Don't worry. That's the point. Nobody knows, because they haven't invested in developing a 2 to 6 word, we call it a narrative. That's the story that you can literally tell forever.
So a few things I'm seeing about you are you have very large letters in your signature. That's your authority in the world. That's your personal brand. That's what you show other people. And so that's more of the extrovert. You gain energy from people. You love being around people. And there's a vitality. There's a dynamic forward-looking force. I would also argue that that is resilience. It's when you get pushed down, there's this self-confidence, there's this inner drive, just a little bit of ego in a healthy way, that you know that ultimately you are going to win if you keep in the game. You know you're going to move forward. I've seen thousands of examples. So when I see that upward stroke, that's about 2.5 times the size of the letters underneath, that tends to be belief in self, high level of confidence, and healthy ego.
There's only 4 qualities that human qualities that I've identified over the years. Curiosity, genuinely curious. That's what's going to allow you to go and and explore this subject with some depth and some substance. If you're surface level and superficial and you just want the quick fix, this is clearly not a good fit, right? So curiosity, courage, vision, initiative. And if you can't see far beyond the horizon, you're right. This is not for you either, because you're focused on short term as opposed to building something long term that's got some traction that's going to last for a few decades or more.
Journaling Your Way to Professional Growth with Angie Wisdom.
Can you talk a little bit about what this Start With You journal is all about, and why does it matter?
Yeah, absolutely. It has become the very most important piece of my life, of my day, and of all of my clients as well. It's a several prong approach actually to starting your day, but serves different purposes. One of the number one things I found out through my own journey and through working with clients is that we often try to succeed without ourselves. Like, we put our relationship with ourselves on the back burner and we tend to everybody else. We give. We run ourselves into the ground. And it's almost like we don't even have this relationship with ourselves. And once we have it, we actually can create, an exponential amount of success. We increase our leadership, because if you think about it, like, we're the core of everything we do, every relationship we have, every job that we do, every word that we say. It only makes sense that we are, performing at our highest abilities and having this relationship with ourselves. So that whole journal process is about really creating this relationship with yourself, but also getting in the driver's seat of your day. First thing in the morning going, I'm taking control of what I want in my life and my business by doing this, and also shifting your mindset to have your mind work for you instead of against you.
So if you look at the handwriting, now it's quite small. I have it in front of me too. So I'm going to point out certain letters that show this. Now, if you look at your T bar in the first line, it is to the left. So the small T, and it's on the left side of that slide. And you do that more than once. So even though this is a small sample size of these funny sentences, I told you in your Purple People Eater friend, take that silly monkey and go back to the darn zoo. The strokes in those two sentences, Angie, can tell us something how we started this conversation about self-reflection. And it's not judgment about ourselves. And that might show a little bit of procrastination, because you like things done in a certain way. You're organized, you're disciplined, you're focused. That's the shape of the writing is very consistent. The stroke is consistent throughout. If I measured it, it's at this level. You're very intentional about what you do. So procrastination is not a negative trait. Procrastination is often a trait of creative people who want to make sure it's right before proceeding forward.
But the relationship with ourselves, if you think about it, think about your favorite relationship, whether it's a spouse, a kid, a friend, whatever. Like, think about those best relationships. You could probably name off, I ask you, what are the most important pieces of that relationship?
Trust, the ability to feel I can be myself, my authentic self with that person.
Yeah.
It's you started with talking about emotion. Emotionally, it just feels like with my wife and my two young kids, there's an ease, there's a flow, there is my best self comes through, and I really like myself when I'm with my wife and my kids.
Right. So you've named all these wonderful components, right? The trust, the authenticity, the comfort, the likability. Also, like, what do you have a commitment to that relationship, right? You show up time and time again. You don't shortcut that. And if you think about it, if you look at the relationship you have with yourself, and probably not for you because of the leader that you are, but for most people, if you look at the relationship with yourself, those are absent. You don't trust yourself that much. You don't follow through with your commitments. You don't know who you authentically are. So what I'm trying to get people to do is go, that relationship with yourself should be your number one relationship. It should be even stronger with yourself than it is with your spouse, because that relationship with your spouse comes from the relationship with you.
Navigating Comedy and Controversy with Brad Gosse.
Can you give me, let's say, 3 takeaways or useful tips as a starting place of what some of those tools from the entrepreneur world that you leveraged into being a successful comedian?
Sure. The first one I would call content diarrhea, where basically I just have everything that goes into my mind comes out through video. So for me, it's always been about volume. Algorithms don't care about the stuff that doesn't go viral, right? You can put up as many videos as you want, and if they're crappy, nobody sees them or less people see them, right? If it's really bad, then it might go viral for being really bad. But usually if it's just mediocre, and I don't know, here's the thing about jokes. You don't know as a comic, when you tell a joke, is this going to hit? Is this joke going to be viral? Is this book going to be viral? Is this going to be, is this a bestseller? I don't know until I release it into the world. And so the more shots I take at the net, the metaphorical net here, the more chances I have of going viral. So number one is about volume of output. And that's always been my game, is just increase the volume of output. Don't overthink it. Tell a joke, put it up, make a book, publish it.
That confidence can easily slip into a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of being a know-it-all. That large central writing, that is a significant ego.
Mm-hmm.
And arrogance I would describe as being sometimes a know-it-all, not a learn-it-all, in the sense of being closed off to other ideas if you feel that you're right.
Yep.
And that with the printed writing, which is not necessarily stubborn, but like very abrupt and direct in your approach, the combination of a little bit of, or potentially arrogance, could turn some people off who you do want to build a relationship with professionally or as a friend or beyond, because they might misinterpret that confidence as being pushed a bit too far.
Sure.
And what I've learned in another area of, it's called the leadership circle. So it looks at what the best leaders in the world, their strengths and their weaknesses, or we call it areas of growth or reactive tendencies. There's 11 reactive tendencies, which are areas in leadership that, based on the data, this is a different kind of data, that data, looking at 500,000 leaders, the one area that can block your growth is arrogance. Because when you close down yourself, because the ego almost becomes clouded to what other people are giving you, other experts are telling you, it's very hard to grow if you're putting up those walls. And because the writing is so printed and it's very masculine and strong, it's almost as if you've got to be careful that that level of those walls and that arrogance do not become a buffer or become erected.
Unveiling Invisible Opportunities with Jeff Tobe.
In the speaking world, if someone was to dive into this particular area, which is uncertain, to be a speaker, what are some of those ways that they could develop these whispers of possibility to see what the market is asking of speakers right now?
Yeah. So I happen to coach emerging speakers as well, another part of my business. They're all natural parts of the same business. And a couple things. First, you mentioned Coloring Outside the Lines. Thank you for the plug for my first book. But my whole life, my company name is Coloring Outside the Lines. I've always believed that we've got to push ourselves to get outside our comfort zone. I like to say that everyone has an edge of the page. I encourage people to find the edge of their page. And Coloring Outside the Lines isn't as risque as it sounds. But specifically to your question, I tell new speakers, the way to look at it is a concentric circle. And if you think of the logo, Target logo, or just a target, and you're in the middle, the way to look for opportunities, I think, in this business is what's the first circle immediately outside of you in the middle? Where do you have the most credibility? In other words, people come into the speaking business and they're brilliant in an area.
Your middle zone O's are very clear and clean. My mom has these too. Not that first one I did, but these other ones, they're very circular. There's not a lot of lines in the middle. That tends to be someone who would want to surround themselves with people who walk their talk, who say they're going to do something and do it. And that is who you really are. So your signature is what you want the world to see.
Right.
That's your brand in the world, your authority. So the first thing is, it might be obvious, but it's okay to state the obvious, is it would be important for you, consciously or unconsciously, to surround yourself with someone who you can trust to take over, who is honest, not just with themselves, not self-deceptive, but they're honest with other people.
The Art of Writing Your Way to Authority with John Tighe.
What you don't want to do is to try and put it all in, because the book's going to be way too long. Nobody's ever going to read it, or they're never going to finish it. What you want to do is, touched earlier about figuring out who your ideal customer is, your ideal client. If you know who that person is, and there are processes to go through, sort of 80-20 style analysis to figure out who those people are. Go through that analysis, pin down who your ideal client is, and specifically what is the key problem that you solve for them. Do that, and then you have the scope of your book. So instead of having to put in all the different stuff that you know, or all things you could do, or worry about, do I put this into it, but then you have a very clear, narrowly defined scope. What people don't want is a ton more content. They've got the book. It's effortful enough for them to read your book. They don't want more stuff. What they want is something that's going to make it easier, help them remember it, and help them implement it. And if you can get it into a single page PDF or a couple of PDFs that they can print off and have on the desk, perfect. Give people stuff that will help them implement. So in the business and problem solving context, that's what people want. They don't want tons of stuff to consume. So give them something short, simple, actionable. The second thing is, don't be afraid to test different things, especially when you're beginning. You test different things and see which ones get the response. See which sort of people are responding to it, and are they your ideal fit customer, and play around with it. Once you've figured it out, you can run with that for perhaps indefinitely, but you've got to spend a bit of time just dialing it in at the beginning. But it's well worth it. You can quadruple your opt-in rate. You have a huge effect on the business.
The Resilience Plan, Transforming Challenges into Opportunities with Dr. Marie-Helene Pelletier.
How do we create a resilience plan, and why do we need it?
I know. We need it. We need it now, I would say, especially because, and I'll get back to how in a quick second, but we need it because the amounts of demands, the changes that we're facing and will continue to face are larger and more numerous and coming all at the same time. And for many of us, of course, as career continues to grow and expand, they get more challenging. We want that in a number of ways, but that's still representing even more demands. So if we were to not have a plan, we would be like someone who's saying, okay, I'm taking my casual running to training for an ultra marathon, and I'm not getting particular shoes to do this. Well, you're going to get hurt. Right? So you need the equipment. So in some ways, that's the equipment. That's the why you need to do this. You need equipment. How? High level, what I'm helping us think through in the book, I've just distilled a few areas that are just the minimum aspects of what we need to create a plan there. And they're very similar to what we would use in business, really. But the analogy I give sometimes is, if we were in a business context, and we were wanting to launch a new service or a new product, would we just have that fantastic idea and proceed? Or we would have that fantastic idea and look at, okay, who else is providing this kind of service? What are the forces that may impact it? What may help? What may represent a challenge? What is a unique differentiator from my perspective? What values are we bringing to it? And all this.
Can you share a story that embodies when you've demonstrated resilience over the course of your life? One story that demonstrates when you showed up at your best with resilience when you needed it. What happened?
Well, I've actually applied this for writing this book because, often, so there's a few times people have asked me, oh, how did you fit that in writing a book? Like all of our lives are full already. And I did not fit it in. I planned for it. And I would not have been able to show with resilience if I didn't do it this way. So in this case, for me, what it meant is, so I had, just like all of us, for real, like life full/overflowing. So absolutely no time extra to do this. And so I gathered a lot of information about what's realistically required in terms of time, looked at my schedule, when was this possible, looked at my overall life, my personal commitments to myself, yes, but also my family, my friends, my, other things in my life.
Comedy, Change, and Character Decoded with Tom Rhodes.
And that T-bar also is like Frank Sinatra's. That's like visionary T-bar. If you look at the F and the T in Frank Sinatra's signature, that is someone who is persistent toward their goals. It's a long T-bar that knows no rest. It actually gets stronger right at the tip. Harry Fox, a famous Canadian, who ran the Marathon of Hope and didn't stop 25 miles a day. I'm not comparing you to Terry Fox in that way, but Terry Fox, right at the end of his handwriting, there was a dot at the end of the T-bar. And the end of the T-bar dot, it's just when things get tougher for you in life. You might have a bit of a drop, a human level of energy drop, but that's when you get toughest and strongest, when things are sometimes bleak. That's when you project sometimes at your best professionally. That's what that's showing. Those traits are in alignment, although I would say they're even more pronounced. You've developed them even more over those 25 years. Now let's look at your writing. I see this with Sir Richard Branson, with Drake, that first big, large first letter in the T, and that dynamic T-bar that shoots across, that is an energy. So it's projecting an energy. And you said you're not necessarily a cynical optimist, or however New York Times described you. You're more of an optimist now without that cynicism. Cynicism tends to have a negative connotation. It's almost like the way I see it is everything has an agenda behind it. So even though someone is coming across kind to you, there's always an undercurrent or an agenda. There's a negative intention. There's no negative intention in your handwriting. There's the fluency in that S. There's the sensitivity, both sensitivity about how you come across, but also sensitivity projected to your partner, to your family, to your close friends. They see that. There's a wanting to acquire knowledge. There's a passion to acquire knowledge. And it's so small, but on the T-bar on the T, there is a hook. You'll see it when you put it down. That little hook on the upper zone is the ability to want more information, an obsession almost in a positive way, to want to learn, to want to grow, to want to develop, constantly and never ending, lifelong learner in the top T-bar.
The Power of Practical and Persuasive Communication in Healthcare with Jamie Mason Cohen.
So stories are memorable, and studies have shown that facts alone do not really connect to people. So here is how we are going to jump in, starting with the clarity story. So the clarity story has a few elements to it. There's a time, there's a place, there's a main character, there's a villain, there's an obstacle, there's a way to overcome that obstacle, there's a resolution, and then finally, that story connects to the data. So the time and place could be when you were helping a patient overcome an illness. Where was the time? It was 1999. It was the place, somewhere in the United States. The main character is the patient. The villain could be the disease. It could be their lack of access to medicine. You show how your pharmaceutical company overcame that challenge with this particular medicine through the trial results. And by overcoming that obstacle, the resolution was the specific results that helped that patient. And you then share the key data that helped that patient. And that's much more effective than just sharing the data and going into the weeds of all of that particular information. So one line of argument feels more like a conversation. Two lines of argument feel more like people are trying to push you to persuade you. So you lose ground not because of the strength of your most compelling point, but because of the weakness of your most compelling one. The second thing when it comes to changing people ethically and to persuade them organically is defend attack spirals don't work. Instead, it's kind of like a dance. Express curiosity. Don't just tell people, ask them questions. Say things like, so you don't see any merit in this point at all?
Building connection, resilience, and optimism in hybrid business teams with Jamie Mason Cohen.
Now, the tone you want to adapt while you go into these meetings is I would call practical optimism. Optimism in a blind sense may take away trust because it feels inauthentic. But practical optimism is best exemplified, I think, by a story that every Tech Canada member might benefit greatly from reading over the next 2 weeks. And it's called the Stockdale Paradox. You see, Admiral James Stockdale was the highest ranking American prisoner of war during the Vietnam War. And he made a distinction that he said saved his life. He said those prisoners, those he knew well, as tough as they were, who were just purely optimistic, they ended up crumbling, many of them emotionally, because they would say, if I only think that I'm going to get out by Christmas to see my family, then that's going to help me through. And then they were strong until Christmas. But when they realized that they didn't have any control over when they would get out, and Christmas came around and they still were locked up and being tortured in a prison camp, thousands of miles from their family in a dirt hut, they got down emotionally and they had trouble recovering from that. So what Admiral Stockdale did is he said, we have to always believe that we will prevail. We have to let our team know that we got this. Say to your team, we got this. We're going to make it through. We're going to make it through. We're going to have the courage to continue. We have all the elements in the midst of winter to find in us an invincible summer, to quote the French writer Albert Camus. And when we have that prevailing faith and belief as a team and that we lead that, yet you also want to balance that paradox with the hard, brutal facts of where the company is right now. So we want to know that we're going to prevail. Let your team know that. You absolutely have confidence that this is going to happen. But you also want to balance that with letting them know that you are in full command of what the facts on the ground are.
The Symphony of Leadership with Freddie Ravel.
First and foremost, one of the rules in comedy, one of the rules in music, one of the rules in speaking is know your audience. Know your audience, feel them, feel where they're coming from, feel their pain. Part of it too is I think I've had enough challenges and pain in my life. So these kinds of things, near-death experiences, financial challenges, the crash of a marriage, I've had to reinvent myself many, many, many times. And I feel that, but the silver lining is you learn so much about the human character. You learn so much about people and your heart opens up. So I think the key is to be empathetic, compassionate, mindful. And then step back and go, how can I co-elevate with this person? And I think if you carry that mindset, and I think this is something you could apply to leadership, team building, time management, collaboration. After you feel that you have opened your heart to somebody and your mind to their needs, then the next idea is not what's in it for me. It's never what's in it for me. It's what's in it for we. How can we support each other? How can we co-elevate each other? So what's in it for we, to me, is the key. You know, you got to think about musical artists sometimes the way you think about a brand and a company. So imagine a brand that's been around for over 50 years and it's still selling successfully, right? These artists are the same way. And the reason they keep doing it is because they're sensitive to the culture. They're hearing they're putting out music that the people want to hear. They're in touch with the rhythm of the world. The world has a rhythm. The world has a melody. The world has a harmony. And when you can hear melody, harmony, and rhythm unified, it's a symphony. It's integrated. And I think that when you feel the integration of elements, that's when you can bring value to people.
What do you hope the person watching this and listening to this takes away?
Well, first, I want to say I appreciate the insight you gave me as we talked about the ballroom dancing, and you helped me reach that revelation of how the community changed how I engaged with competitors, so to speak, and changed my framework for how we can see it as an asset. But I hope whatever part of this particular episode resonated with the listeners, remember that these skills aren't things you just hear it once and you do it. It takes practice, it takes time, but as we said before, getting just a little bit better. If you just focus on one part of this episode and say, that's the skill I'm going to work on and improve, I'm going to take that idea, I'm going to go deeper on it and get a little bit better, that's where you're getting that $1,000 a year that's going to start compounding, to continue the analogy. And so I hope you walk away with at least one of those, and maybe you even queued up 2 or 3.
Shanice, can you share one thing that you appreciated, took away, and you could even reinforce to take action on as a result of our conversation today?
Jamie, it was so many things that you pointed out. Just by my handwriting, I am deeply, deeply excited about this, while at the same time being so surprised that you could tell all of that by my handwriting. And just when you're talking about the high T's, being very objective in the way that I go about things, those are definitely things I can do some introspection on to see how I can use those strengths and strengthen them even more.
What was an aha moment in this conversation, and what was one thing you appreciated about it?
I think aha was just what you were just talking about. The person that I need to look for is very much like me. And I've always thought, I'm good enough at what I do. I need to find the opposite. You know, I do a lot of work with behavioral styles, as do a lot of speakers and trainers. And so I'm always looking for that opposite to complement me versus finding somebody that's a lot like me to take it over. So that was kind of my aha. What I appreciated was your flexibility to go wherever your guest goes. So I appreciate the research you did. Not every podcast that I participate in does that. So thank you for doing that. And I appreciate you having me here in the first place. So.
Well, folks, that brings us to another extraordinary episode of the Signature Leadership Show, where we help world-class leaders uncover their authentic selves. We hope you enjoy this special compilation, a journey through some of the most memorable moments from our past episodes. It's been a blast reliving those enlightening conversations and incredible stories with you all. And remember, if you missed any of our previous episodes, now's the perfect time to catch up. As we wrap up today, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to all our extraordinary guests who have shared their knowledge, their vulnerability, their insights, and stories with us. It's their voices and experiences that have made this podcast what it is today. If you have been with us since the beginning, thank you for your unwavering support. And if you're a new listener, welcome to the Signature Leadership Show. We have a treasure trove of past episodes waiting for you to explore, so be sure to check them out. Before I say goodbye, remember to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us improve with each episode. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Jamie Mason Cohen to stay updated on future episodes and exciting, relevant, useful, leadership-based content.